We now invite you to join us for part 6 of the rebroadcast of the live conference with Supreme Master Ching Hai, titled Humanity's Leap to the Golden Era, Washington, D.C. Climate Change Conference on November 8, 2009, in Washington, D.C., USA.
Well, next we will hear from Dr. T. Colin Campbell, a professor of nutritional biochemistry at Cornell University and author of the best-selling book, The China Study. Let's hear from him now.
My name is T. Colin Campbell. I'm a longtime professor at Cornell University, presently a professor emeritus of nutritional biochemistry. I have been working in the field as a researcher, as a lecturer, as a teacher for many, many years, more than 50 years, in the field of food and health. We learned when we gathered all the information from the laboratory on the one hand, from the human studies on the other, that this information rather substantially pointed to the idea that consuming anything other than whole plant-based foods could create health problems. We learned that nutrition is a major factor in keeping us healthy. And by nutrition, I mean consuming whole plant-based foods and eliminating, as much as possible, animal-based foods, dairy, eggs, and meat. And one of the outcomes of this idea is not only do we restore health, but now we're learning that this can have a major effect on the environment. I know there's a conference coming up in Washington, D.C. on the question concerning global warming and livestock production and animal food consumption. And I would extend my best wishes for that conference. I think it's an important conference, a very important conference. And I'm delighted to pass along a message that what is being done here is about as important a topic as anything that I can consider. I extend my best wishes to the conference.
Thank you, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, for your insight into the relationship of diet and health.
So, if we unite for a kinder, animal-free lifestyle, it will be better for our health and for our planet. I wonder how aware today's children are of the benefits from switching to a plant-based diet.
Well, let's hear what Winter Grace Williams, the daughter of famous American talk show host Montel Williams, has to say.
Some of us don't eat right. Fast food, junk food. Sometimes even our school lunches have too much fat and cholesterol. I'm Winter Grace Williams. You know my dad, Montel. And I'd like your help in bringing healthy foods into schools. A lot of us hate to see this. Others hate to see this. And nobody wants to see this. The answer is this: veggie chili, veggie burgers, healthy foods. Sign our petition today at healthysschoollunches.org.
Now that was to the point. To elaborate on this topic, we bring to you our next speaker, Dr. Ruby Lathan. Dr. Lathan currently serves as the Nutrition Policy Manager for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Also, she has been inducted into the Inc. Hall of Fame as one of the outstanding women in science, technology, and engineering. A vegan herself, Dr. Lathan is the driving force behind proposed legislation for the Healthy School Lunch Program. Please welcome Dr. Ruby Lathan.
Well, good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here this afternoon. And I just want to first thank the organizers of this conference, as well as the renowned leaders and speakers who are participating here. And we're going to take a little bit of a shift and talk about the role of diet and climate change and focus a little bit on children and child health. And they've asked me to talk a little bit about the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and give you a little insight on what we do. We are a nonprofit organization based here in Washington, D.C., made up of tens of thousands of physicians, dietitians, and healthcare professionals, as well as lay people who promote health through preventative medicine, through good nutrition and ethical standards of research. So this is definitely an area that fits within our scope. So the role of diet and climate change is very critical. And we know, based on the many reports that we've heard here today, including one entitled Climate Change, Sustainable Diet, Health, the Connection and the Solution, that we know that our food choices, which are a contributory factor to many major chronic diseases, are also dramatically impacting our climate. So we know that children's health reflects the society in which they live, and we're going to focus on that for a moment. Research shows that the risk of chronic disease increases with the increase in meat and dairy consumption. And this graph shows the increase in meat consumption per capita between 1909 and 2005. And we can see that this increase was about 50 pounds. It was 148 pounds per person in meat consumption. And in 2005, it rose to 202 pounds per person for meat consumption. And for cheese consumption, the difference is even more striking. We went from about 3.8 pounds of cheese consumption in 1909 to about 31 pounds in 2005. So it makes you wonder, where's all that extra cheese going? And somebody else is having mine, because I'm not having any. So when we look at this, we're wondering, what impact does this have on our health in general when we see these kinds of increases? Consequently, the increase in child health and the prevalence of overweight has also increased. If we look at this graph, what it shows is in 1963, the prevalence of overweight among children and adolescents was about 4 to 5%. And it has steadily increased until 2002, where the prevalence of overweight among children was at 16%. And if we continue to plot this data, it rises in 2006 to 17% and on and on. And when we get the current data, I'm sure it's even more than that. So we can see that as we're increasing these things, such as meat and cheese consumption, our weight is going along with that. And as we know, that when we have a higher weight, that many chronic diseases are related to that. And so we wonder, if we have this increase in weight of children, what impacts them the most? And one of those things is the school lunch program. We have about 100,000 schools participate in the National School Lunch Program, and that's feeding over 30 million children each school day. Initially, this program was designed so that the most disadvantaged children would have adequate nourishment for learning and other things that they needed to do. All too often we have high-fat, high-cholesterol-laden foods that show up as staples in the lunch line. We often see pepperoni pizza, macaroni and cheese, and chicken nuggets as the traditional staple that you can go in almost any public school in America, and it's on the menu. And so we know that some of the risks associated with this are diabetes, hypertension, cancer, and heart disease as well. And so I want to take a moment to focus on diabetes, because that's one of the major diseases that shows up when you have chronic overweight and obesity in our society. And if we look at diabetes over the last decade, the last 10 to 12 years, the data is astonishing. So in 1994, this shows the prevalence of diabetes. So we had the darker blue colors show the prevalence of diabetes in that state if it's above about 4 or 5%. So if we're looking at the dark blue color, in 94 and 95 it increases. In 96, we're getting a little bit more. 97, again, showing the increase in diabetes in each state. 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, 3, 4. And in 2005, we had to change the scale to add another color because the amount of diabetes outgrew the current scale of about 5%. So we went from about 4% per state to at least 8% of the population or more having diabetes. And so we're seeing, as the shift in our dietary patterns have changed, so is our weight and so is our health. And consequently, so is our environment. And so when we make these links, then we can talk about what we can do about that. So as it's wreaking havoc on our diet, on our health, and our planet, it's also just having a devastating effect, as cited we've often heard about, as cited here today in the United Nations report Livestock's Long Shadow that an estimated 18% of greenhouse gas emissions were related to livestock and its production. However, the 2009 report, Livestock and Climate Change, by researchers at the World Watch Institute, estimated that that number was a bit higher, at producing about 32.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. So that's about 51% of greenhouse gas emissions, which is astonishing. This is from the report by Food Watch study that was commissioned in 2008. And what this shows is, in comparison to a meat diet versus a non-meat diet, the amount of greenhouse gases for a car driven. For example, a meat-based diet would be equivalent to driving a car over 4,700 kilometers or 3,000 miles over a one-year period. But if you switch to a vegetarian diet, which is the second one there, it reduces that by half. And if you then switch to a vegan diet, it only takes about 1/7, produces less than 1/7 of the greenhouse gas emissions as a meat-based diet. So that's quite astonishing. So we wonder, what can we do about that? One of the things is that the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has done is implemented kind of an innovative approach to tackling this, starting with our children, and that's our Healthy School Lunch program. And in that program, what we do is help schools introduce vegan options into their lunch line. We show them how to do that in a sustainable way, and a way that is friendly to the children, and they accept it and usually prefer it over some of the other options that they're given. As a matter of fact, we did a study in Broward County, Florida, where we introduced these options over several weeks in the school lunch program. And so what we had was a vegan option right next to your regular meat-based option. The vegan option in this graph is represented in red, and the meat-based option is in blue. And the children had open opportunity to choose whichever they want. Now, we will say we promoted the vegan option so they knew they would be there and that they would be available. But even after this promotion period, these items stayed on the menu. So we can see that the vegan options of veggie burgers, veggie chili, black beans and rice sold almost 3 times as much as the meat options. So the vegan options were very well accepted by children, which is contrary to a lot of what we hear sometimes by school officials or parents saying kids won't choose healthy food if you give that to them. And we've seen the opposite, that when it's presented to them and they're included in the process, this is what they want. Not only are our school children accepting it, but parents are as well. We did a survey of over 1,000 adults and asked them about, do they think that vegetarian or vegan options should be made available in the school lunch program? And over 80% agreed that this should be an option. So we have a lot of support and momentum for this. A second approach that we're taking is on a federal level with the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act. And what we're doing there is we're lobbying Congress to make it more affordable, accessible, and easy for schools to include these healthy, high-fiber, low-fat foods in the school lunch program. So right now we are meeting with our representatives from all over the country and getting a lot of support. And things are looking very positive in pushing our bill forward, that this will be very accessible for schools. Secondly, we're looking at the commodity structure. And what that means is almost all schools who participate in the school lunch program get their foods, lower cost foods through commodities from the USDA. So what we want to see in that, instead of spending a large amount of money, which they currently do on meat and cheese products, we would rather that the commodity structure favor low-fat, high-fiber, healthy, nutritious, plant-based foods so that the schools can then in turn order those foods. And so that's another initiative that we're pushing forward in Congress as we're lobbying for that change. So we believe that change is possible. We have over 100,000 children, students, parents, and supporters who have signed on at healthysschoollunches.org and other places to sign our petition to Congress saying, this is what we want This is what we want to see in our school lunches. We want to see healthy kids. We know healthy food relates in better behavior, better academic performance, better physical health. And so we're building a momentum. And when we've presented this petition to Congress, it has made an impact. So we're continuing to gather those signatures at a grassroots level, trying to work this from more than one angle, getting people involved, schools involved, and also lobbying our government. So schools have also picked this up and gone on their own with a lot of what they've done. For example, we have school districts that are implementing meatless Mondays to cut costs and in turn increase child health. We have California, New York, Hawaii, and Florida have all implemented resolutions encouraging vegetarian meals and non-dairy beverages in place of cow's milk to be served in schools. The American Medical Association, as well as the American Public Health Association, have issued resolutions recommending that vegetarian meals and non-dairy beverages be served in the school lunch program. So people are listening. We also had a recent report from the Institute of Medicine, which influences the School Nutrition Association and the USDA in terms of what they serve, that came out about 3 weeks ago that said there needed to be significant increases in fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains in the school lunch program. So we're finally seeing people catch on. So as we're collating this information, there's really no way to deny that these changes need to be made, and they need to start with our children. Because when children adopt healthy practices, then they become healthy adults and continue those same practices into adulthood. And we think this is particularly important for our country as we're talking about health care, because if we can stop the problem before it starts, we'll make quite a few strides. And I'd like to briefly introduce 11-year-old Nina, who is part of the reason we're here today, addressing methods of preserving the planet that we're going to leave behind for our children. So I'm going to ask Nina to come on up, and I'm going to ask her a few questions. Now, she's quite a little activist herself and a vegetarian. And she's been so kind to come up and answer a few questions about how she feels about what we're doing here, and particularly healthy school lunches. So, Nina, what grade are you in?
I'm in 6th grade.
Great. And why are healthy school lunches important to you?
Well, they're important to me because if we have healthy lunches, then a lot of people will be healthier.
Seems like common sense, right? So what foods would you like to see served at your school?
Well, I think a lot of fruits and vegetables would be really good. Instead of having like fruit cups, which a lot of people have at their schools, they could have fresh fruit.
That's wonderful. Absolutely. And why do you prefer to eat fruits and vegetables rather than animals?
Well, I've loved animals all my life, and I think it would be really hard if I had to eat one.
Thank you. And my final question is, why do you think it is important to stop eating meat?
I think it's important to stop eating meat because if more people stopped, then it would be really good for the environment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nina. And I'd like to just close with a statement that President Obama made at his climate change speech to the UN in September. And he says, "The good news is that after too many years of inaction and denial, there is finally widespread recognition of the urgency of the challenge before us." And so I would like to say, let's continue our tireless work to create a sustainable future for our children. Thank you.
First, we want to thank Nina for being so compassionate toward our animal friends. And Dr. Lathan, may all schools and communities worldwide follow your noble example to feed our children healthy vegan food.
My name is Lauren Vanderpool. I'm the CEO and founder of Vanderpool Gourmet and Healthy Living Services Incorporated. We're a nonprofit teaching young people and people all around the world how to eat vegetarian and vegan foods and the importance of it, and growing your own food as well. So, go veg, be green, and save your planet.
All information concerning the scientific evidence of climate change and its solution is in Supreme Master Ching Hai's book, From Crisis to Peace, free for download at crisistopeace.org.
Serene viewers, thank you for your presence today on Words of Wisdom.